Welcome to the Playmakers Bar podcast. We switched things up. We separated college football from the NFL, so this episode is all about college football. We'll recap week one and what an opening week it was for college football. A lot of headlines came out of week one. The new AP polls are out. Does Dallas still believe in Miami to win the ACC? I'll ask them and we'll find out. But we'll also look ahead to week two. Talk about some of the biggest matchups for week two, make our predictions, and what does this mean looking forward. Sit back, enjoy, engage, whatever you need to do, because this is going to be good.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's another day, and it's time for the Playmakers Blog podcast. But this week, we're doing it a little bit different. This episode is going to be mainly about college, and we'll have the NFL on a separate show. So we're doing two shows, just making it a little bit smaller and convenient for everybody. So with that being said, I got my co-host, Dallas Glenn. How you doing?
Doing good. Enjoying this nice tropical storm weather over here in the Gulf Coast.
Sounds good. Nice sunshine day down here in Jacksonville. So let's recap. Go ahead and recap what an interesting week one we had to start the college football season. Dallas, what's your biggest takeaway from week one?
Between LSU and Miami and the independent teams and BYU and Notre Dame, the college football playoff era, the biggest takeaway for me is week one is a very important week. You have to basically go balls to the walls with your scheduling. There are teams like Florida who can blow out a cupcake and sneak into the top 25. But, if you're an LSU, if you're a West Virginia, if you're a BYU, if you're a Notre Dame, you kind of just have to go for it. Only 4 teams get in, and week one, we're starting to see week one might be the most important week in college football. What about you?
Man, big ups to the SEC. Only one team in the conference lost. That was Tennessee.
And they lost to number 12.
So the SEC showed why the SEC is considered the best conference in college football. Alabama, with their 2 quarterbacks, just took it to Louisville. Miami getting smacked around by LSU. Auburn taking down Washington. Ole Miss beating Texas Tech. The SEC made some statements in week one.
Yeah, man, it's the SEC's world, and we're just living in it, man. We said it during the preseason when we made our picks. It's just the conference is so dominant, and there's still one team atop of it all. That's the scary thing. The conference is so deep, and you still know you got to deal with Alabama at the end of the day. That's wild.
Anything surprised you about week one?
I'm kind of surprised that Stanford had to pass to beat a group of 5 team. I really thought that Stanford and Bryce Love, I thought that, that rushing attack was going to dominate. Usually Stanford doesn't play by traditional Pac-12 rules, but San Diego State brought it to them.
I guess San Diego, their game plan was not to let Bryce Love do anything. And
the crazy thing is, though, we thought that it would probably be San Diego State playing their game and trying to make it a shootout. It was the exact opposite. Give props to San Diego State, man. They've been winning double-digit games for years now, almost a decade. They've been making bowl games. They've been doing all that. And that's basically the way you take down the Alabama of the West, I guess. Do you think Bryce Love, do you think the Heisman talk is basically done after 1 week now?
No, it's not. It's not. They schedule so where that he has plenty of opportunities to still stake his case for the Heisman even after this performance in week one. I know for me, Utah State surprised me. Appalachian State surprised me. They didn't win, but they pushed Michigan State and Penn State to the brinks in their own backyards.
I think that makes the Big Ten look real bad.
That could have been Michigan State was looking ahead to Arizona State and almost got caught.
That's a real bad look by the Big Ten, man. Like, you know, they're not cupcakes. App State, Utah State, those aren't necessarily cupcakes. But, I mean, you schedule teams like that in week one for a reason. It's like, you know, you on one hand, you're trying to play the middle of the road. You don't want to be the teams that play on Youngstown State, Stephen F. Austin, McNeese State. You don't want to be those teams. But at the same time, it's like, man, look, everybody ain't Oklahoma out here. Everybody ain't a team that can schedule a group of 5 team that won double-digit games last year and think they're just going to get out squeaky clean. It's real out here, man. Y'all got to be careful with the way y'all schedule unless y'all really ready to live that life, because now Penn State's basically eliminated themselves from any playoff talk, even if they win the conference. Because the year that they actually won the conference, they were dominant. They were really good. Now you open up almost getting beat by a Sun Belt team, man, it's a wrap for them. I don't even know if they get a New Year's Six Bowl, because you're basically thinking that Wisconsin's going to lose the Big Ten championship game or win it, and Ohio State loses the Big Ten championship game. So right now they're playing for, like, you know, a Music City Bowl or something like that. I don't know.
Now, I know some people are out there listening to us thinking, Dallas, you picked Miami to win the ACC. Where do you stand with them after week one?
I would feel bad if Florida State had looked good. I think I said, if I remember correctly, a one-loss ACC team can get into the playoff. You got to be smart with that loss, though. Now, the way LSU was looking, that was the biggest jump of week one. LSU now goes from being a 25 ranked team to a top 15 ranked team. LSU continues to win and they crack the top 10 and they get into that dog race. That becomes a very understandable and good loss if Miami can rebound, get over themselves, get over the turnover chain hype, and can come back and do what they need to do. I believe Miami's run last year on Miami's name and reputation, if Notre Dame can be ranked 8th after 1 week and beating Michigan, who hasn't done anything since John Harbaugh got there, to be real with you, I think that losing to LSU in the long run, if Miami were to win out, because that's what you're going to have to do to basically be able to beat Clemson, you have to be able to beat the teams that are in front of you. You lose to an SEC team that looks like they're ready to compete, okay, that's understandable. Every team on their best day is going to lose to an SEC team that thinks they can compete. That's no harm, no foul. You got to win the rest of these games, though. So it doesn't really hurt my pick because there's still a possibility that it could be Clemson versus Miami in the championship game because they're in different divisions. Miami can still do what they got to do, win a game any given Saturday, even if, you know, they just barely get in. Now, Miami loses another game, they won't make the playoff. But they can always win the conference. They've established that that's two completely different things. So as of now, my pick is still somewhat safe because if I'm correct, FSU and Miami are in the same division and they both are 0-1. It's crazy, though, because that means I think they might be playing behind Wake Forest. I have to look that up in a second. But, I mean, you know, I don't think Wake Forest and Duke are going to hold out in the long run. Duke played Army, and I forgot who Wake Forest played. So, I mean, blowing out Army is no slight against the Black Knights because, once again, that's technically a group of 5 team. I think BYU and Army are a group of 5, and Notre Dame gets grouped as a Power 5, even though they're independents. Miami, Army won 10 games last year, and that might be Duke's claim to fame, but nah, I don't think that warrants in the long run being scared that the ACC is going to turn upside down this year.
All right. I got to give you credit. You said BYU was going to spoil Kevin Sumlin's opening. I wasn't buying it, but BYU spoiled to open up Kevin Sumlin's at Arizona.
Yeah, man. Like, you know, I just have this weird feeling. I just have this weird, like, you know, desire to like and root for the FBS independents in this new system. Like in the BCS, an independent basically had to go undefeated to have any shot at getting an at-large bid. Now in the playoffs, the stakes are even higher. You can see by BYU's schedule, they're playing Cal Berkeley So they're going against another Power 5 team. You can see Notre Dame's schedule every year. People get mad at Notre Dame and say Notre Dame's underperforming, but it's crazy. You put Notre Dame in the Big 12, you put Notre Dame in the Big 10, it ain't as many complaints anymore. But looking at BYU, man, it's interesting. Because I said when I made the pick, I don't see how Kevin Sumlin installs his style of offense that quickly, and BYU just keeps being content with being sorry with all the resources that they have. It was one of those, like you like to say, something had to give. So hopefully, because, it was a close win, but it was against a Pac-12 team. Arizona, for the past few years, has been better than Cal Berkeley. So we will see. I'm confident that BYU is up to something this year. But, on your end, you got the Virginia Tech pick, right? You got the
If I had to pick a rank versus rank game that was most surprising, it would be the Monday night game with Virginia Tech and Florida State. But Florida State offense, they couldn't do nothing. To see that offense and they couldn't do nothing because Florida State defense, as many times as they was in a hole and they were backed up, Virginia Tech couldn't score. As you can tell, they only scored 24 points, and Florida State had 5 turnovers. So that tells you Florida State defense, they was fighting all game. But the offense was going to get nothing done. And when they did get something done, they'll mess it up within the next 2 plays with a turnover.
Man.
It's the same thing with Michigan and Notre Dame. Michigan had their opportunities, but they turned it over. Same thing with Washington and Auburn. Washington had their opportunities. They couldn't convert. So pretty much when you look at Washington, Michigan, and Florida State, they had the opportunities. The game was still within range. They just missed the opportunities. And the more they missed the opportunity, the other team got more confidence. And when the other team gets more confidence, they know at any given point we can put this game away.
So, transitioning from what I was talking about with the Independent, transition to the Florida State game. Looking ahead, real quick. After week 1, what say you about Notre Dame, Florida State in South Bend?
I got to see how Florida State bounces back before then. But right now, I don't like Florida State chances. I really don't. Not in South Bend.
For the sake of just, I guess we could transition to talking about do you have the AP Top 25 in front of you?
Let me pull that up.
All right, while you're doing that, okay, because we're not going to talk about Notre Dame versus Ball State, because if they beat Michigan in a slugfest, they're going to walk through Ball State. I'm just being real. That's my prediction. Notre Dame, sorry BYU. BYU, they have a legacy, and BYU's schedule is decent, but I just don't see BYU going undefeated or going 11-1 the same year Notre Dame does and getting a bowl over Notre Dame. So looking at Notre Dame's schedule, right now Notre Dame is the 8th ranked team in the country after 1 week. After 1 week, they're in a position to make a run for it. Ball State, Vanderbilt, Wake Forest, Stanford, Virginia Tech, Pittsburgh, Navy, Northwestern, Florida State, Syracuse, USC. Folks, there is only one group of 5 team on Notre Dame's schedule, and it's Ball State. I ain't saying Ball State has like a huge history of being a spoiler, but there's worse things than you can do than to pick a MAC team as your group of 5 cupcake game. When you're talking about group of 5 conferences, if you look at bowls and everything, the MAC, when they make a bowl, as long as it ain't Akron, if the MAC makes a bowl, they usually win it or perform decently. So this ain't an FCS team. This ain't Stephen F. Austin. This ain't McNeese State. It's decent. You open up with a storied rival. After Ball State, you're playing SEC. You're playing ACC, Pac-12, ACC, independent storied rivalry game against Navy. Navy doesn't look good after the Hawaii loss, but still, it's a rivalry game that goes back and back and back and back and back. It's basically one of those things where it's like Notre Dame shows by scheduling Navy in a climate like this that they're not scared of the upset. Big Ten, ACC, Pac-12 closing out the season and what they will need to win to have any shot at the playoff against USC. I mean, this is a cherry-picked schedule to where, yeah, it's not the best of the ACC. Yeah, it's not the best of the SEC. Yeah, it's not the best of the Big Ten. But at the end of the day, if Notre Dame runs through this schedule, there is no argument. There's no room for doubt. Notre Dame is an independent team that scheduled 10 Power 5 teams, one group of 5 team that they have no history with, and another group of 5 team where their rivalry spans all the way back to World War II. That's the schedule that you need to have if you're not going to be in a conference. Notre Dame technically has the ACC loose affiliation, and that does help. That's something they have over BYU. But as we talk about the AP Top 25, it's just looking ahead. Notre Dame, this is one of those years where it's like Notre Dame is like the San Diego Chargers of college football. But if you're a person that doesn't have a college team, if you're a person that doesn't like the whole conference, like Notre Dame is basically your team this year. It's weird to think that Notre Dame would be an underdog, but the way that the college football playoff has been, if you like the Cinderella story, if you like the underdog, it might sound weird, but Notre Dame is who you need to root for this year. So, that being said, how's it looking this week, Darnell? What the AP say?
The AP polls came out Tuesday, and they showed about the SEC. 2 teams that weren't ranked in the initial polls are ranked now, in South Carolina being 24 and Florida being 25th.
Mm-hmm.
LSU had the biggest jump from 25 to 11. Auburn went up a couple of spots from 9 to 7. And pretty much Georgia and Alabama, they still in their same spot after dominant victories. So there are 7 teams from the Southeastern Conference that is in the top 25 right now. The ACC took the biggest hit. Florida State went from being ranked 19 to not ranked. Miami had the biggest drop from being close to the top, from being 8 all the way down to 22nd.
Jesus.
Now, Virginia Tech did hop up from 20 to 12, and they still got Clemson. But as you can see, week 1 didn't do a lot of favors for the ACC.
Yeah, I mean, one big takeaway I take from that when you talk about the top 25 in the ACC, Wake Forest and Duke. I'm going to say something, forgive me, Darnell, but, just being completely objective, saying everything that I've ever said about the SEC, Duke blew out a team that won 10 games last year in a bowl in Army. I can't remember Wake Forest win, but I just remember paying attention to the independents like I do. Army wasn't even close. I don't understand how Duke is in the ACC, opens up the season, and we know who Duke is. Duke isn't a world beater. Duke isn't the team that you look to blow out teams that won double digits. Duke is the team that's supposed to have a close game every week and barely make a bowl. They opened up the season blowing out a team that won 10 games last year and won a bowl game. And I think it was against San Diego State. I mean, I don't understand how Duke doesn't get that rub, but Florida does. Because, I mean, I'm sorry. I know the SEC showed up and showed out last week. But I really think Florida is getting the SEC benefit of the doubt. I'm thinking if the 25th ranked team, if the 25th ranking is supposed to mean this is a team to look out for, but they really ain't expected to do nothing, I mean, come on, man. LSU jumps up to 11, and Florida gets the 25th spot, but Duke actually blew out a team that won 10 games last year. I don't know about that, man. I think if Florida did the same thing that they did to whoever they beat, to a Sunbelt team, if they basically did what Oklahoma did to FAU to, like, you know.
That was both of us was kind of surprised on that. We thought FAU would probably do something in the first half, and then they get their butt handed to them in the second half. They
weren't even close. That's crazy. They got a Heisman candidate at running back. They're coming off a double-digit season. The same head coach. I mean, ain't nothing changed. That's wild. That's wild to me. You lose your starting quarterback. Things are different. Yeah, I don't know. It's
did things look different? Because from my point of view, it ain't look different. Kyle Murray came in and it just looked like the Oklahoma offense from last year, and it's like, dang.
You know, Oklahoma being the king of the Big 12, them having an offensive juggernaut doesn't surprise me. I think me and you talked last week. Oklahoma rarely ever has a gap at quarterback. Like, Oklahoma for like the past 3 quarterbacks have had, I think, NFL draft picks and Heisman candidates. So that doesn't surprise me. What surprises me is the lack of performance by FAU. FAU was supposed to be a darling. Nobody thought they would make nobody thought they would make a New Year's Six bowl. But I mean, they were supposed to do better than they did.
I mean, I think them players seen that, they realized exactly where they was at. And they were like a deer in the headlights.
Yeah, I mean, look, say what you will about Lane Kiffin. You hire Lane Kiffin to your school, you have a big-time coach who thinks in a big-time mindset. Now, he understands what school he's at and what kind of team he has. But look, Lane Kiffin's not going to give you a double-digit season, then schedule friggin' FAMU or Bethune in the first week. Lane Kiffin's going to go out and say, we got a small chance, but there's a chance. And if we beat Oklahoma, the season is ours to lose. I tell you right now, if LSU can jump up to 11 from 25 and Florida can crack the top 25 period, imagine where FAU would be this week if they beat Oklahoma. I think that's the mindset that Lane Kiffin had. I think Lane Kiffin knew, and the AD at FAU knew, that they weren't going to have a shot against UCF as far as rankings go and positioning goes unless they were able to pull off something like that. Because UCF is just so far ahead. I mean, UCF is 19 right now.
Yeah, I think the committee is really just focusing on UCF and Boise State from the group of 5. I don't think they were looking at anybody else. It's just them.
And I think Lane Kiffin, he was at USC, he was at Tennessee, he was at Alabama, he was with the Raiders, he was with Lane Kiffin's been there, done that. So Lane Kiffin and his AD knew, like, hey man, yeah, it's a money game. Yeah, Oklahoma's going to give us this 900,000, 500,000, whatever. But what if? That was basically what they had to do. So, it's no slight against FAU. FAU has a history of subjecting their players to money games and basically abusing their players. But, this particular year, that coach, that game, they had no other choice. They had to come out swinging. It sucks that, they couldn't get going at all, because now it basically makes them look like, they are who we thought they were. They went to a school like Oklahoma, got shellacked, didn't even have a showing. So whatever FAU does now, everybody's going to look at them like, but you got shellacked by Oklahoma. UCF just beat Auburn. Then like 3 years before that, they beat Baylor. Nah, sorry. But I mean,
and if I'm a Power 5 team, look out, because UCF sent a message to UConn and the rest of the world Thursday night.
Exactly. Now, basically the theme of this episode, ladies and gents, has been week 1 scheduling basically determines in this era what kind of chance you have to make the playoff. You look at a Notre Dame, they're independent, they beat Michigan, they're 8th. Now they don't have to do as much work. All they have to do is win their next few games and maintain. You look at a Miami, they're basically done for as far as the playoff. They're 22. Like, I think the way that they lost and them dropping so far, they're not going to be able to jump up that easy no matter who they beat. unless it's Clemson. But UCF, for everybody who wanted to make fun about the national championship gig, for everybody who wants to be a Power 5 stand and everything, look, UCF scheduled a conference opponent for week 1. Look at Florida State.
On the road.
Yes, on the road. Say what you will. It wasn't out of conference. It wasn't none of that. UCF had their cards in their hand, and they played the right card. They scheduled a conference opponent on the road, blew them out. New head coach, all of that. You can't. They're scheduling a strong out-of-conference opponent, and then there's playing a conference rival on the road. I mean, the way that UCF performed, they're going to climb slow. They might not break the top 10 this year unless they go undefeated again. It's going to be a slow climb, but, dude, that's a hell of a start. And
ACC, you better look out because there is North Carolina, there is Pitt on the schedule.
And it's just like Notre Dame. Is it the best that the ACC has to offer? No, but that ain't UCF's fault. That's Pitt and North Carolina's fault. UCF said, okay, Power 5, ACC, we're picking some ACC teams. We have the ACC schedule, but we ain't trying to play Clemson. Okay, Florida State, last game of the year, so we can have all the film we need. USC, other last game of the year. Like, you can't get mad at who they put in the schedule. Be mad that who they put in the schedule ain't good yet. UCF beats those two teams. Their resume is bananas. Then you also have to consider the fact that Boise State, as we said before, is in a conference that's going to cannibalize itself. So you put those two factors together. Notre Dame and UCF, man, those two teams, at the very least, those two teams are going to be the ones to get New Year's Six bowls that are going to be – well, UCF won't be shocking. But those are the two teams. I just look at their schedules. I look at their week 1 performances. How do they not do it?
As we get ready to close out week 1, give you a recap. Dallas went 9-4 in week 1. I went 7-6 in week 1.
Man,
the SEC really helped Dallas. I went against them and I got bit.
Tried to tell them, and it's crazy. One of my biggest things, if I just went with my gut and my logic, I would have been 10-3. I should have just picked LSU.
I should have picked LSU.
Hell.
But now we're finna go ahead and look at week 2. Week 2 kicks off for us Friday night, 16 TCU at Southern Memphis University, SMU. I might put this on upset alert.
Now for everybody at home, so they can decide if they agree or disagree with you, how do you define upset alert?
When I say upset alert, it's a game where one team could fall asleep at the wheel because they're looking ahead to a big opponent and find themselves in a battle. They might not get beat, but all of a sudden they in a battle because they not fully focused on the task at hand. So they mess around and everybody's looking at the TV trying to figure out what's going on with this game. So with TCU going to SMU, knowing that they got Ohio State next week, I'm going to put TCU on upset alert. I'll say TCU will win, but I think it won't be no more than 14 points.
A 2-score game is upset alert.
If you really think about it, most people got them probably winning by 5 touchdowns?
And ladies and gentlemen, this is the difference. Upset alert is when you think the team is going to get caught slipping and get beat. Last week, BYU, Arizona, that pick, that's upset alert. Ain't no way in hell SMU loses this game. To say TCU should be on upset alert and that they should win by 2 scores, that doesn't make any sense. That 2 scores is a comfortable win. 2 scores, we're talking 10 to 14 points. We're talking SMU has to go against TCU in a 2-minute drill, score twice. That basically means that game is over. There's no way. The fact that you think TCU might get 2 scores just furthers my belief that TCU is going to blow them out. I just don't see how a team can be put on upset alert, but we're both going to pick them to win by 2 scores or more. But, I mean, I don't know. If you're a gambling man and you see a spread that's ridiculous, say hypothetically, I don't know the spread. Say hypothetically, the spread is like 40 or 30 points. Now that's ridiculous. That's tough. You're putting your money on TCU and TCU style of offense, blowing out a team by 4 or 5 scores. That's different. I can see how you might pick SMU in that scenario, but TCU has nothing to be worried about this week.
Let's move on to Saturday. It would be the number 18 ranked Bulldogs of Mississippi State going to K-State to take on the Wildcats. Dallas, how you feeling?
This is very interesting to me. Mississippi State, if you look at Mississippi State over time, it's kind of their typical Southern SEC style, but I don't know. You just can't put your finger on it. Mississippi State is usually in a bowl game, and when they're in a bowl game, they're usually going toe-to-toe with like a Big Ten team or something like that, and they're always competitive. Kansas State, I'm thinking maybe that's Mississippi State's way of trying to stay in the conversation. They're 18. That's a decent place to be after week 1. They're in the SEC West, so they're playing a Big 12 team. And they're at Kansas State, right? Or are they at home?
They're at Kansas State.
Okay, so they're going on the road against a Power 5 team. They're the 18th ranked team in the country. They're in the SEC West, but the SEC West proved last year, if you're truly the best team in that division is the best division in all of college football. That division has gotten 2 losers into the national championship game. LSU in 2012, Alabama in 2017. 2 losers from the SEC West have played for national championships. If I remember correctly, that was the last championship LSU won, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so 2 national champions have lost the SEC West. I don't know about the whole history book, but I just know that Ohio State didn't win it when they got in after they lost the Big Ten. So you got to do a lot to look impressive in that division. 18th on the road. I think they beat Kansas State handily. I think the SEC style of football can take over a Big 12 defense. I know the West Virginia-Tennessee game happened, but it's weird. West Virginia's defense was clearly the most dominant force in that game. But even though the score was like 40-14, it just, if you watch the game in context, West Virginia didn't seem to really know how to put their foot on Tennessee's throat. And it was a super long weather delay. Before the weather delay, Tennessee was starting to get their rhythm going. Now, granted, horseshoes, hand grenades, I know, but still. So Mississippi State, in theory, is already way better than Tennessee. If Tennessee was unranked before, they're definitely unranked now. I'm thinking that this game ain't going to be comfortable. I'm thinking a team with the style of Mississippi State has to play for it. But I'm thinking 28, 18, something like that. It'll be like an unorthodox 2-score game. I think that Kansas State will probably keep it under 10 because I don't think Mississippi State is there yet. But I do think Mississippi State wins, moves up in the rankings after beating a Power 5 team. What about you?
Mississippi State. They get their quarterback back. Nate Fitzgerald will be back after his 1-game suspension. I don't think there's nothing K-State can do about it. Now we're going to talk about this game because we got to. I'm pretty sure me and Dallas is picking Oklahoma. But does UCLA keep it close?
Man, look, Chip Kelly is one of the most stubborn coaches in any level of football. Chip Kelly is a system coach. Chip Kelly believes in his system. You're going to run his system and his offense. That being said, you can only recruit so much and win so many recruits at one time in one off season. I didn't watch a UCLA game. Completely objective, complete honesty. But I've watched Chip Kelly at Philadelphia Eagles. I've watched him when he was at Oregon. And I remember how he could have been the coach of the 49ers, but he just wouldn't give up his style of offense. Chip Kelly literally could still be the coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, but he would not give up his style of offense. Chip Kelly believes in that gadget stuff. You look at the Alabamas of the world, the Wisconsin of the world, the Stanfords of the world, the SEC West of the world. It's ugly. It ain't pretty. But at the end of the day, if you can run the ball down somebody's throat, if you can play consistent defense, if you have a quarterback that knows how to check it down or get it to the possession receiver or throw it to the tight end, you're going to be in the playoffs every year. You're going to be in the New Year's Six every year. That gadget. Tell me the last time Washington State and Mike Leach played in a BCS game or a New Year's Six game. Tell me the last time a Big 12 team not named Oklahoma made the college football playoff. There's a place for passing. Football is lending itself with the rules and everything to passing. But Chip Kelly doesn't understand how to adapt. He doesn't have the roster right now. He has a Jim Moore roster, whatever the hell that may be. He doesn't keep it close because he doesn't know how to adapt. He's stubborn. If anything, he'll walk in knowing that he's going to lose to Oklahoma and try to just use it as a practice game. Because once you go 0-2 and you're a Power 5 team, you're basically written off. Because the run that you would have to make to even have a shot to compete is ridiculous and damn near impossible. I think UCLA gets blown out because their coach is just going to refuse to adapt.
35 points.
Easy.
35 points. That's all I got to say. But moving on, now to get into some games that you have to think about.
Some real football.
We're going to start in the SEC. SEC Nation will be live at South Carolina inside Columbia for the number 3 Georgia Bulldogs are on the road against them Gamecocks of South Carolina.
This right here is what you call an upset alert. Last week I was looking at this game. I don't know if we said it on the podcast or if we were just talking in jest. This is the game I looked at where it was like conference opponent, same division, coming off a national championship loss. I think Georgia is one of those teams that don't just look ahead, they look way ahead. I'm thinking Georgia is trying to look at their road back to the national championship, and I think they're trying to prove that they can beat Alabama either in the SEC championship game or in the playoffs. I'm thinking that Georgia, this is where they might get caught slipping. First SEC game, South Carolina comes in ranked now. You're at South Carolina. Media is going to be there. SEC Nation is going to be there. The whole fanfare and hype is going to be there. Man, look, this is what I'm looking at as this is the week where somebody might get caught slipping. This is where somebody might get caught slipping. SEC East versus SEC East, they know each other.
You thinking South Carolina?
Yep.
I would agree with you on everything you said, except for one thing. The fact that South Carolina is ranked now, the Bulldogs and Tenders are up now. Oh, they ranked. They feeling good about themselves. And now we coming to them. It'll be close. But I'm going to go with the Bulldogs. I know a lot of Gator fans like, oh, you can't do that. You're a Gator. But I'm being objective here. The fact that South Carolina ended up ranked gave Georgia what they needed to say, you know what? We can't look past this team. They are ranked. They are hungry, and they are coming for us. We better be on our P's and Q's.
So, Darnell, 24, not a lot of wiggle room. If they lose by a last-minute touchdown, a last-minute field goal, does South Carolina stay ranked?
Nah, they don't. They won't fall far. They won't be ranked, but they won't be far off.
So essentially, when you think about the big scheme of things, unless South Carolina is going to go 11-1, This is a must-win for South Carolina, isn't it?
I say it's a must-win for both teams.
You think Georgia really goes that far down, though?
No, they won't go that far down, but you have to realize that the East has gotten better. So they can't get complacent. Because if you mess around and get caught by South Carolina, down the road, there's Florida. There's Kentucky. So there's no room for complacency in the ACC, period. And I think that's why Alabama is always dominant, because they don't stay complacent. And I think that's what Georgia is going. I think that's what the mission Georgia is going to be on, because Kirby Smart is from the Alabama tree, and he knows you can't be complacent on any given week. One complacency can ruin your playoffs just that fast.
True.
And speaking of new coaches, College Game Day is going to be in Aggies country for number 2 Clemson and Texas A&M.
I mean, Jimbo Fisher must be doing something right as a head coach, because they sure needed him on Monday in Florida State. But new team, Jimbo Fisher wasn't ever known to do anything crazy. But I mean, he plays number 2 Clemson before he even gets to the SEC West schedule. Jimbo Fisher is a great head coach. He ain't no SEC West head coach. I don't see him beating Clemson. Even at home, I don't see it. Yes, this is Clemson going against an SEC team, but Texas A&M has been the one team. If you go back and remember when Missouri and Texas A&M first got to the SEC. Missouri won the SEC East like 2 out of the first 3 years they were in the conference. They knew what they had to do. They came ready to play, and they adjusted. Texas A&M, they still look like a Big 12 team. Even when Johnny Manziel was there, it was Big 12 football. It was spread, run around, throw the rock. There's nothing that I can see. There's no angle. There's no strategy. There's no game plan. It's just if Jimbo Fisher's bringing his style from Florida State to the SEC West, it ain't gonna be fun. He might not last 3 years. His first year, he's playing Clemson this early. Who made that schedule? Seriously, who made that schedule? Who okayed playing Clemson this early? Clemson's been good since the playoffs first started. They were good when it was still the BCS. Taj Boyd had taken them to like a couple Orange Bowls. Clemson has not been the early 2000s Clemson with C.J. Spiller and Sammy Watkins and stuff like that. This is Clemson.
Dabo Swinney.
Who okayed this game this early? Your season's basically done. Because if you think in the off chance that you can catch Clemson slipping when they go into an SEC arena and you beat Clemson close at home, that means nothing when it's time for you to play Auburn and Alabama. Doesn't mean a damn thing. There's scheduling a strong out of conference opponent. There's playing a conference game. Then there's just scheduling it. It's not smart. You're setting yourself up to fail. Clemson.
I'm going Clemson. But imagine what the world would have to admit to if Texas A&M was to give Clemson hell.
Last week they played some team named Northwestern State. Where the hell is Northwestern State? Is Northwestern State even D1?
I think they FCS.
I mean, they FCS, but goddamn, did they just move up to D1 though?
All right. Think of it like this. I'm picking Clemson, but think of it like this. We already just finished talking about how great week 1 was for the SEC, despite Tennessee being the only team losing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would it be more of a feather cap if Texas A&M put on an amazing showing against Clemson? And is it like, can anybody really stop the SEC at this point?
I think Tennessee's performance basically answered that question for us. Texas A&M beating some school that I didn't even know existed, 59-7 in the first week, then turning around and playing the number 2 team in the country. you look at Tennessee's performance and you look at that final score. If you can't see my perspective on how I think Tennessee played a decent game, if you think that Dallas should be making excuses when I bring up that long rain delay and how it changed the whole momentum that Tennessee was gaining, I don't see how you can do the argument of, well, if Texas A&M only loses by 3, if Texas A&M only loses by 10, Texas A&M ain't winning. If anything, it looks better for Clemson in the end, because Clemson went into an SEC arena. They played the SEC at their own game, and they came out and they survived. They went into an SEC West arena knowing everything that they were risking, knowing what would happen if they were upset, won. The better Texas A&M looks, the better this win looks for Clemson. I don't think that, Clemson's weaker this year, blah, blah, blah. No, because everybody thinks West Virginia is better than they are. West Virginia beats Tennessee. Everybody thinks West Virginia is legit. And they're Big 12. Now you have the perennial ACC champion going into an SEC West arena. Dude, friggin' West Virginia, a neutral site. They were too scared to go play at Tennessee. What's scary about Tennessee? Clemson's going into Texas A&M. Straight up away game. There's like I said, dude, there's absolutely no angle. I can't think of a single angle. It's Clemson. The better Texas A&M does, you have to assume that the SEC is going to do even better as a whole this week. So the better the conference does, the better Texas A&M does, the stronger win it looks for Clemson. And it's going to make Miami look that much worse. Like, damn, my LSU was 25 at the time. So you can't say nothing about Texas A&M being unranked, because when you think of an unranked SEC West team, we're thinking what, 40s, 30s? I mean, hell, Florida's just now ranked after beating a cupcake team. So they must have been like 27, 28. There's no angle. It's Clemson. And it only gets better for Clemson if the game is harder.
As you hear it here, we both picking Clemson, because I picked Clemson to win the conference anyway. So, but let's move on. We're gonna stay within the ACC because we got a Big Ten ACC matchup. Number 13, Penn State, who survived at home against Appalachian State, going on the road against ACC opponent Pittsburgh.
I'm picking Penn State. I think that James Franklin, the job he was doing at Vanderbilt before he left, I think that he got into his team after that game last week. He probably lit into them something new that they have never seen before, and they're not going to be caught slipping against Pitt. Pitt's an ACC team, Power 5 out of conference opponent. James Franklin is going to get into those boys that they have to win this game to even have a shot of having a shot to get a New Year's Six bowl after that performance last week.
I'm picking Penn State because Appalachian State gave them a wake-up call. I think they realized, Saquon Barkley is not walking through that door no time soon. So guess what? The rest of y'all going to have to pick up what Saquon Barkley did for us when he was here. And you get to do it against an ACC opponent in their backyard. To win in front of everybody, we still are Penn State. The fact that the opening game was against Appalachian State and they had a hard time, I'm not diving too much into that performance because guess what? They beat Pitt. They get ready for Big Ten conference play. They can still make their case for the playoffs. It starts Saturday at Pittsburgh.
Agreed.
Now let's get to a top 15 a top 20 matchup, should I say? Pac-12, the 17 SC Trojans on the road against number 10, the Stanford Cardinals. I'm going to go ahead and take this one first. Bryce Love will not have that performance he had in week 1. Bryce Love is going to do some damage to USC. And I'm taking Stanford to win the game at home.
Scary thing is about Stanford is their running game got completely shut down by a group of 5 team. They still won by over 20 because of their passing game. I don't know if people have heard about San Diego State, but that team has been legit for a while. USC being ranked 17. I mean, clearly they're not back yet. After Stanford figuring out what they had to do, after Stanford realizing that they're the big dog and San Diego State was the little puppy, if Stanford really has a legit passing game this year, along with having a Heisman candidate running back, USC can have fun with that. Stanford by 17.
There's a lot of green going on today. Ooh, what? Let's get to here. Staying in the Pac-12. A matchup for Herman Edwards at home. Number 15, the Michigan State Spartans, coming off of a close victory against Utah State, are at Arizona State. That was, I'm going to let you go on this.
You play to win the game. Who cares if they're 15? 15 is just a nice number that you see when their name is written on paper, but the game is not played on paper. It is played on the field. Arizona State by 3.
Going upset. This is a hard one for me. I think back a couple episodes, I told people to circle this game because I said this game is going to be a good one. And I think I said that, and I was leaning towards Arizona State. But after what I saw with Michigan State, I think Utah State woke up a sleeping giant. Because I think Mississippi State messed around, looked ahead to Arizona State, and got punched in the mouth, but was able to recover to still win that game. So I'm gonna go with Michigan State. They go on the road on the West Coast, get the job done. Because I think Utah State gave them a wake up call that they needed, and I feel like they gonna pull that one out. I'll say by 7. I'll say by a touchdown.
If that is how they win that game, Michigan State is basically donezo as far as the playoff convo is concerned. You can't beat 2 unranked teams by 7 to start off your season and be considered a playoff team.
I mean, we'll see what happens. But we're going to stay within the Pac-12. Kevin Sumlin coming off a loss to BYU. Now he has to go on the road to a team that he used to coach. The Houston Cougars of the American Conference. This will be a bad look. A very bad. This will be a worse look for Kevin Sumlin than Chip Kelly if they don't beat Houston.
Sad thing is, it ain't an if, it's a win. Houston has been chugging along and doing what they need to do as an athletics program. Houston athletics as a whole is on and popping. Their football team is just one part of a hugely successful machine. Kevin Sumlin, he lost to BYU pretty much for the reasons that I said. He is going to try to bring what he brought to Houston and Texas A&M to Arizona. But like Chip Kelly, he ain't got that personnel yet. Houston does. Houston right now is trying to hang with Boise State and UCF somehow, some way.
Not to mention Ed Oliver, the defensive end for Houston, but yet to be the number 1 pick in this upcoming draft.
Houston, Case Keenum, Ed Oliver, it just Houston spoiled Navy season a couple of years back. Houston's always trying to be the thorn in UCF side whenever they play their game. Houston is a group of 5 power. Arizona is a team that just hired a new coach for obvious reasons. It's going to be a terrible look. But when Kevin Sumlin loses, Arizona needs to realize that, hey, the biggest name isn't always the best hire. You need to look at what he's trying to bring in and what you have now. Unless you're having realistic expectations, which is rare in FBS football, you don't hire Kevin Sumlin or Chip Kelly wanting to win now. Houston, I'm thinking 10. It might be a shootout. Kevin Sumlin might work a miracle and get his offense to work, but Houston's the king of shootouts. Houston is underrated when it becomes a shootout. Houston, 10.
I might regret this, but I'm going to give Kevin Sumlin the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to say that Khalil Tate, he would do more than what he should have did in the opener against BYU. He would do more against Houston, and it would be enough for them to escape Texas with a victory. It would be enough. Because Khalil Tate is a Heisman hopeful too. And he didn't really have a Heisman performance that everybody was looking for. So I'm looking at this is his bounce back game. Khalil Tate, I'm putting this on you. Do what you got to do and make sure that your Wildcats walk out of Texas with a victory. Now,
God, before we move on, this might be the worst year for Heisman candidates. I know it's only 1 week, but dude, all the front runners, which one of the front runners actually had a good game last week?
Tayola, Alabama.
Wow, we're really making him a Heisman candidate?
Oh, he's a Heisman candidate. That's like he's actually the favorite.
Jesus Christ, one half of football. Okay.
He's actually the favorite, and he looked like it against Louisville. Real quick, the next 2 games, give me a real quick pick. Fresno State at Minnesota. Who you got?
Fresno State, 15.
I agree with you on that. I'm taking Fresno State. Cal at BYU.
BYU continues this weird run of independent teams being successful in the college football playoff era. RMU had 10 wins last year. Notre Dame had 10 wins last year. I think this is the year where BYU follows Notre Dame's coattails. BYU beats their second Power 5 team in a row.
I learned my lesson last week. I'm not picking against BYU. Now, we're going to finish off the season in the Southeastern Conference East Division. I'm going to set it up, and I'm going to let you go first. This game here is a real touchy game for people in Lexington, Kentucky, and the people in Gainesville, Florida. The Florida Gators have beaten Kentucky for the last 31 years. And probably the toughest loss for Kentucky was last year at home when they simply gave Florida 14 points because they forgot to cover a receiver at the pre-snap twice. And Florida got walk-in touchdowns on both occasions. Florida is ranked 25th after beating Charleston Southern at home. The game is in Gainesville. But this one's going to be good. Go ahead, Dallas.
"31 years of sorrow and sadness." First off, let me just applaud how much of a damn shame that is. Second, it's the law of numbers. When you play and lose that many times, you're bound to win. Now, there have been worse Florida teams. God knows there has. But I'm thinking that this is one of the most underrated slip-ups of the college football playoff era. There's no way in hell you blow out a FCS team at home and you're the 25th best team in the country. I think that 25 is a fluke. I think that 25 should be completely disregarded. Florida ain't Florida yet. Kentucky, if you're ever going to do it, literally, this is when a Florida team that's playing at home the week after blowing out an FCS team, and those boys in the locker room looked in the paper or looked online, and they're ranked 25th. Them boys are cocky. Them boys can't be calmed down. Their coaches have probably been dealing with them being too cocky and too arrogant all week, and they've probably been given the classic don't look ahead speech all week. This is an SEC East rival. They're tired of losing. They would have won last year if it wasn't for 2 boneheaded-ass mistakes. They could use Bud Dupree, but I don't think it'll matter. It'll be close and it'll be a heartbreaker, but it's the perfect storm. It's the perfect storm. You talk about sleeping giants being woken up. Florida just got lulled to sleep. It might even be by a damn safety. Who knows? It's going to be some crazy thing that's going to happen. It'll make ESPN, it'll make SportsCenter and all that, but dude, Kentucky. It's just everything is being written too perfect. If Kentucky can't win this, why are they still in the SEC?
You saying the streak ends at 31?
Yep.
Now, I have said on many occasions, and Dallas can vouch for me, I said within the next 2 years, this streak ends. At some point, all streaks are made to be broken. But there's one thing. The game is in Gainesville. Last week, there was incitement brought back to Florida football, even though it was Charles Sutton. Excitement was brought back. The swamp felt like the swamp. I'm going to say my Gators pulled this out because the swamp is going to feel like the swamp again. They'll pull it out. And I think the streak ends at 32 when we have to go to the Lexington, Kentucky the following year. I'm saying for right now, the streak stays intact for one more year. Just for one more year. And with that being said, this is where we close the college edition of the Playmakers Bar podcast. But stay tuned because we'll be back to talk NFL and get you ready for the start of the NFL season. Until then.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.